Okay, we are live. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 48 of Radio Europa. My name's Laura Towler, and I'm your guest host this evening. Tonight, I'm joined by Darth, who's in Scotland. Hello, Darth. How are you?
Hi, Laura. Not too bad, thanks. Yourself?
Not bad as well, thank you. I've just rushed home from work, so I'm hoping that we can look through this UN report live on air tonight. So, just one quick notification before we begin. Mark Collette is doing a live stream at 9 p.m. tonight on the YouTube channel of, I think it's an Israel advocacy group or something. I posted it on Twitter yesterday, and he phoned me up the other day and said that he was doing a 3-on-1 debate. So it was him against 3 Zionists. I think there's also 1 or 2 other people that are on his side now. But it's a very, very brave debate to do. I can't believe he's doing it. So this stream will be finished by 8:30. And anyone who wants to jump over to that stream that Mark's on afterwards at 9 p.m, I think we should all go give him some moral support. Will you be watching that as well, Darth?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a listen. I didn't really know about it until about 5 minutes ago, but I'll certainly go give it a listen.
That's great. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a new report which has been released by the United Nations, and it has some population predictions for the year 2050. But before we go over to that report, I've been told that we need to show a video of Merkel from today. I've not seen the video, so I don't know what it is, but I think it's something to do with her having a nervous reaction to something. Are we okay to show that on the screen?
It's a bit more than a nervous reaction, I think. Waiting on Boomer Tech loading here.
We're waiting on the IT guy to show it on the screen.
Basically, to avoid an here we go. I was going to say to avoid an awkward silence, but on we go. I mean, to me, that almost looks like somebody who's, I don't know, I don't want to make fun of somebody, but it almost looks like something like Parkinson's or something like that. Apparently, she claims that it was to do with dehydration. I'm just reading from a BBC article here, and it says she was dehydrated. Quote, "I've drunk at least 3 glasses of water, and so I'm doing very well now." However, it seems to kind of strike me as similar to what happened to Hillary Clinton on one of the 9/11 memorial days, I think before the Trump election, when she was basically carried into the back of a car. Obviously not quite nearly as bad, but I don't think that's dehydration that's doing that to her.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, isn't it? But that's a very strange reaction. I'm not sure what's going on. I mean, she's one of the most powerful people in the world. You'd think that they could give her a glass of water if she needed one. But yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of that.
Yeah, so, and ironically enough, she was shaking during the playing of the German national anthem. I mean, you'd almost think that maybe she doesn't like to hear her own national anthem.
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's what it is. So, so we're going to move over to the main topic, which is a report which came out from the United Nations yesterday, I think it was, and it has some predictions for the world's population by the year 2050. And I must admit, I've been at work all day, so I haven't looked through this in too much depth. However, I did see one rather alarming statistic in it. So at the moment, the population of the world is 7.7 billion people. And they're saying that by the year 2050, so within 31 years, that will have risen to 9.7 billion people. So we're looking at another 2 billion people within the next 30 years, which is, I mean, it's more than a quarter of what we've already got on the globe within the next 30 years. That's pretty terrifying to begin with. And then by the end of the century, so by the year 2100, the planet will have around 11 billion people. So before we even start looking at the demographics of that and which people are expected to grow, I'm sure we can all imagine which people it is. What do you think of that, Darth? Just the way that the population of humans is growing so rapidly.
Well, I mean, I think it's natural to happen where you've got countries where the death rate is decreasing due to increase in medication. Obviously, we went through that, about 100, 150 years ago. But all these countries are much bigger than ours. And as they modernise, their birth rate shoots up because they're able to keep alive more of their children. But you've got probably, I guess, by the end of the century, or the 2050 till the end of the century, a lot of these countries will do as what China seem to be doing, and their population will start to slow as people start to realise, well, I don't have to have as many children, or I can't afford to have as many children. I mean, it's a pretty scary statistic. You know, they're saying something along the lines of India is expected to show the highest population increase between now and 2050, overtaking China as the world's most populous country by around 2027. The 9 countries expected to show the biggest increase are India, Nigeria, Pakistan, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Indonesia, Egypt, and the United States of America, ironically enough. In all, the population of sub-Saharan Africa is expected to practically double by 2050. So somewhat worrying when I've heard statistics as over 50 or 60% are wanting to migrate to Europe and America.
Yeah, and I've just posted a document into the Defend Europa group chat. If our IT guy could show that on the screen. It basically shows the fertility rates by country. And as you can see, I don't know if we can get that up on the screen, but it's pretty light in the white countries, so the Western countries across Europe. Russia's actually pretty light as well. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, North America. But then when we go down to Africa, the colour is just, you see where it's dark purple on the screen. So these countries here where they're darker purple, we're looking at around 7 children per woman, 6 children for Somalia, 6 for the Congo, and then all the way down to Somali, Chad, Angola, Uganda, Nigeria. These are all over 5 children per woman. And then we go up to Europe and it drops below 2.1. So 2.1 is a recommended fertility rate, which is required for a population in a first world country to stay the same size. It's slightly more than 2 children per woman because I think it's more, is it more boys than girls are born, or more girls than boys are born? And also it combats infant mortality rates. But as you can see, the United Kingdom is 1.8 children per woman, Norway 1.8, Belgium 1.7. And obviously those figures aren't just for ethnically British or ethnically Swedish women, it's everyone who's in the country. So, yeah, I mean, it just makes sense, doesn't it, that these countries where the fertility rate is high, they're going to have more children, their population's going to grow, and then ours is dropping. And then if you add immigration on top of that, it's just a disaster. I don't know how people can deny replacement migration at this stage. Any thoughts, Darth?
I think it's not... I don't think it's denied per se. I think it's just denied in the negative way. Obviously, you can't say that people are having more children from these countries and saying, I think every single European country now is under the 2.1 children. So the entire of Europe is there, and I think the US is actually round about there right now. So basically, all the Western countries in the world are below the rate in which they can keep the population the same. Hence why people are advocating for, migration to the countries to prop up our declining birth rates and aging population. But I mean, absolutely, you can't say that people who are coming from sub-Saharan Africa, who are naturally going to have more children because A, that's what they believe in, and B, that's their culture. I don't understand how that can not affect the demographics of a Western country.
Yeah, so it says India is expected to show the highest population increase between now and 2050, overtaking China as the world's most populous country by around 2027. India, along with 8 other countries, will make up over half of the estimated population growth between now and 2050. So the 9 countries expected to show the biggest increase are India, Nigeria, and Pakistan, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Indonesia, Egypt, and the United States of America. So America's the only white country in there, but of course by the year 2050, I don't know if anyone can correct me in the chat, but I think 2050 is the year that white Americans are supposed to become a minority in their own country.
Majority minority.
Yes, a majority minority. So, I mean, if we compare these figures to that one, so by the year 2050, when whites will be a minority in America, the population of the world will have increased by another 2 billion people. 16 years later, in Britain, we're supposed to become a minority in our own country by the year 2066. There's another statistic from Britain as well. By the year 2030, our children are supposed to be minorities in schools. So white British will be less than 50% of the school population. It's actually by the year 2027. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel like I'm blackpilling people now, but it's not looking good if we're looking at these figures. We need to really work at closing the borders and increasing the native fertility rate in our country. I think we need to stop sending aid to these people as well, because it's just not helping, is it?
No, it's certainly not. And I mean, I think you would need to have an agreement by politicians in Western countries to incentivize, more children being born to native people. And there's an obvious attack on the nuclear family right now, between telling women that they should be going out and working hard and they don't need to have children to be happy, and then by the time women actually realise they want to have children, it's too late, or they only have one or two children, and obviously, what's going on in America right now, where the left are advocating that abortion is a good thing. There's definitely an attack on that, and then the only hope you've really got is country like Hungary. Viktor Orban obviously is putting in place policies to incentivize Hungarian women to have more children. But I unless there's a big shift in political viewpoints in Britain anyway, I can't see something like that being brought in here. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the camp that I don't think that there aren't enough of us. I just think that there are too many of them. So I don't think we need to be getting into this competition where we're racing and racing and racing to have more children. I do think we need to increase the fertility rate at least past 2.1, but I just think there needs to be less of them. So I am team repatriation. I think we need to start deporting people. And whenever I say that, people always get upset at me. But we can start by deporting illegals. So about 15 years ago, when Theresa May was Home Secretary, she said that there were 500,000 illegals in Britain. Now, that's a long time ago, and I also don't believe her. I think it's higher. So what are we doing with them? Why aren't we deporting them? We can deport criminals because we're way too soft with criminals. I mean, look at all the people that go to fight for ISIS in the Middle East and Africa and stuff, and then we just let them back in. Even just doing those things would probably drop our population by at least 1 million, I'd say. And then I'd also change policies where people can come over to work or to study, but it's on temporary visas. You don't need to get a British passport and become a quote-unquote British person. Refugees that have come over as well, Syria's safe. You can go back to your home country. Refugees it's like they're not refugees anyway. Even the United Nations said that, was it 7 or 8 out of 10 of them are economic migrants. But I don't know why, just because there's a refugee crisis in the Middle East, why do they have to come over to Britain and become British citizens forever? Like, come over while it's unsafe. If you have to do that, I'd rather they didn't do that either. But then you can go back after the war. What do you think? Anything that you would change?
Yeah, I mean, I think my views are maybe very slightly different to yours. My only issue I have with the whole concept of deportation is if where do you draw the line? Where are you native enough to stop yourself from being deported? However, I totally agree with you on the concept of criminals and illegal immigrants. Ultimately, if you come here illegally, you have broken the law. You've broken the law to come here. You have not done what everybody else who's waiting in line to do. I couldn't just go to Mexico tomorrow if I wanted and live there for the rest of my life. If I entered illegally, I would be arrested for it. But for some reason, there seems to be this kind of view of if somebody comes here illegally, then they must have come here for a good reason, and it would be wrong for us to deport them. So people who come here and then offend, I don't see why they should be allowed to stay here and ultimately suck up finite resources. So I can definitely agree with you on that. I mean, it's not an easy situation, and like you said, I think there's very much an ulterior motive because, as you said, like with Syria, with countries whereby there is no longer issues, or the issues are much less of a problem, people aren't returning. Now you are finding in some places where people are returning because the problems are getting really bad. I think to quote a controversial video, I think Lauren Southern's Borderless, I think I watched some of that, and I remember seeing a couple of people who they interviewed felt like they had been tricked into coming to Europe because it wasn't what they were promised. And that's definitely, people are being tricked to coming into Europe because it's this wonderful utopia, and then they get here and it's not what they've been told. So yeah, I definitely think, there needs to be some kind of measure put in place to deport at least illegal immigrants and criminals. I totally agree there.
Yeah. And another thing is, I think if you're an elderly person, say you came over from, I don't know, maybe you came over with the original Windrush people, and if you've lived in Britain all your life and paid your taxes and stuff, I think if we start saying we need to deport these people, then there are going to be too many British people who won't agree with it. And I don't see the problem with these people, living out the rest of their life in Britain. I mean, they can't have children anyway. It's not like they're going to increase the population. But I think we need to kind of draw a line under it then and say no more. We've got closed borders now. I mean, there's so much that we can do anyway. If we change the culture, if our media wasn't against us and it was encouraging people to feel guilty for being white, and if it was, giving ethnic minorities, soon not to be minorities, all this courage to hate us, if we changed that, then so many of them would be knocked off their high horses anyway. And then if we change things like the handouts and the benefits and how easy it is, how you can get away with crimes, so many of them would not feel comfortable anymore and they wouldn't want to be here. Another thing that I agree with is reparations for repatriation. So a lot of people are always moaning at me saying, we want reparations for the British Empire and slavery. And, you can have reparations, but it includes repatriation as well. So I think Mark Collette's idea was to give £15,000 to people who want reparations, but that comes with you leaving the country. We'll buy you a one-way plane ticket and you can go live wherever you want, hopefully in your native country. And, there's your apology for the British Empire. Not that we should be apologising for it anyway, because they came out pretty well from it. But I just think that it is possible to look at repatriation, but it's just a topic that people are too uncomfortable with. But if we don't look at repatriation, then we're going to be the ones that feel like we don't belong in this country. People always say they've been in the country all their life. It's not fair to send them away. Well, if we don't, we're going to be the ones that feel like we're in a foreign country. So, and the difference is that they have somewhere else to go and we don't. So I kind of see it as a choice as it's us or them. And it's quite an easy choice for me to make, as harsh as that sounds.
Can I also make another point? Is, you have, I mean, it is mainly left-leaning, middle-class people who make these points. But, you hear, especially here in America, we're such a racist country. We have such a problem with racism, and we need to do more. And people who come to this country are subjected to horrible conditions. Yes, there is racism in any country in the world. However, why come to a country which apparently is such a hive of racism and bigotry? Why come here if it's such a bad country? And from what I understand, the people who come here, you've got the gangs in London. A lot of that is down to gangs of different nationalities are fighting each other. So that is, a level of racism in gang culture in areas of London. So they come from their native country to here to continue their struggles against each other because of racism. Whereas we advocate that, racism is a crime and you can be imprisoned for it. But apparently we're still this horrible racist country that can't do anything right. And if you're a minority, you should fear for your life every day.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't know how good they have it. I mean, David Lammy, I know I go on about him all the time, but he annoys me. If it wasn't for the British Empire, then he would be living in, you know, some mud hut somewhere in Africa, like not living in London, working for the government and earning the money that he does and using all our technology and stuff. And they are really so ungrateful. And they just come over here and they moan about racism all the time. But it's because we let them get away with it. We're too soft, and also the media. In fact, the entire establishment, so the media, the government, academia, empowers them to do it. So I'm not surprised they do it, to be honest. But a lot of them genuinely do think that they either built our country for us after World War II, they're told that and they believe it, or that we needed them for jobs because white people won't do jobs. And it's all rubbish. It's all just lies that's fed by the establishment. But they believe it because they've been told it. So you've got the government telling them one thing, and then we're like, you know, just the far-right bigots on the internet that are saying, well, actually, no, it's this. We're truthful, but obviously they believe the officials. So it's like a constant battle that you're in trying to get the truth out there, but they don't take it in, do they?
No, they certainly don't. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take a long time for there to be any kind of quote unquote wake up or red pill in this kind of issue. And you know, even if you're looking from race repatriation or native population replacement, you know, 9, 10, 11 billion people, it is a heck of a lot of people living on the planet. Now, I've heard people saying that this was maybe 10 years ago or so, you could fit the entire population of the world into Texas and have a population density no greater than London, and then have the rest of the world to grow crops on. I think with technology, we are more than capable of looking after the population that is on the planet and more. It's just there is obviously great amounts of corruption, and you know, I think if we really want to fix this problem, there needs to be, I don't know, the problems in these native countries where people are coming from, they need to be sorted so that they're less inclined to move to Europe and America, because it's all fine and well saying Europe's a great place, but you know, if you have all these people coming here, as you said, 80% to claim benefits, then these benefits are eventually going to run out, and we're not going to have a large enough population working to raise said benefits for these people. So the ultimate issue is you need to solve the problems in these countries. And I'm not saying that we need to do that. I'm just saying that they need to be solved so that people are less likely to run away from their country, come here illegally, and ultimately some will, but a lot will never work and will claim and will take from the system, and it will never be replaced.
Yeah, and I think that people forget that these people actually brought themselves here. You know, we didn't force them to come here. And so they left their home, their native country and their native people. They can do it again. You know, we're an upwardly mobile world now. You know, it's not difficult to move to another country. And I genuinely think that they're painting this picture that it's going to be awful for them. Another thing as well is that lefty liberal types always say, but it'll be such a bad life for them back in their home country. But then in the same breath, they're saying that these people enhance our country. So which one is it? If these are great, you know, scientists and engineers and stuff, then surely they can do that in their own country as well, right? It's just the hypocrisy, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a definite doublethink, and it's the same with, you know, we need to have more people come to this country because of a lower birth rate. You know, the constant kind of doublethink argument of that, and it's so tiring. I'd rather them stick with a one argument, and then I know, well, okay, you think that this is the best way to make our country better, but stop lying to us to have an ulterior motive put in place for your own benefit.
Yeah, well, the fact that they can't stick to a coherent argument shows that they're just anti-white, and it is just demographic replacement. So I'm just going to go back to the UN report because there's some interesting graphs in there that I just want to show. I think this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode, guys, because there's only one topic tonight. But if anyone has any questions while we're just going over these graphs, feel free to tag DETV in them, and Darth and I will answer them. So in the UN report, let me just pull this up. There's a graph on page 7 which is the population estimates by continent. It kind of breaks it up a little bit weird, but it is pretty much by continent. And I don't know if we can get that on the screen. Yeah, that's it. So can you see the purple line at the top? That's sub-Saharan Africa. So that's the total population by billions down the left-hand column. And as you can see, by 2050, it's looking at around 2 billion. And then by the year 2100, it's right up there at the top at just under 4 billion. 4 billion sub-Saharan Africans. So obviously we're not going to be alive by the year 2100, but maybe our great-grandchildren will, or grandchildren maybe, great-great-grandchildren. And then underneath we've got Central and Southern Asia and Eastern and Southeastern Asia underneath that. So I guess China will be covered in that. Europe and North America it looks like in fact, the dotted line down the middle is where we are now. So it looks like it's just going to pretty much stay at a stable limit. And then why is Australia at 0 at the bottom? I'm not sure why that's down there. Australia's got a population of 0. Can you work that out?
Well, I'm not sure. I think there was mention either in the report or in an article that you sent earlier on that New Zealand and Australia will increase their population slowly over the next while. I'm seeing if I can find it. I think that might be a mistake of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, they did. The report does class Oceania as separate to Australia and New Zealand, but then there's not a line for Australia, is there? So it looks like we're wiping Australia off the map. But it's the Europe and North America one that we need to be worried about. So it's currently at 1 billion if we look at that dashed line down the middle, and it actually looks like it's dropping slightly by the year 2100. Bearing in mind that this is on top of the demographics of these continents changing. So that doesn't mean ethnically European people. It just means that the population of those continents is going to stay pretty stable. And then underneath, there's another interesting graph. If I can just find it. Sorry, guys, one sec. It might have been... Oh, it's the one above, sorry. So page 6. That breaks down the population by millions for you. So we can see the population today, 7.7 billion. 2030, it will be 8.5 billion. 2050, 9.7 billion. And then 2100, 10.8 billion. And it's got the breakdown there of all the different continents. Why is Australia so small? Do they have... Maybe that's right. What's the population of Australia?
It's not big. I think it's about 20 million.
I'm being told it's
25 million.
I'm being told it's 26 million.
Okay, I was going to guess 25 million, but yeah, it's not big, and New Zealand's the same.
Yeah, so look, by the year 2050, it's only expected to be 38 million. That looks nice, doesn't it? Maybe we should all go live in Australia. They've got lots of land as well.
It's the same size as America, but you've got a same population as like Canada or something like that. But I think they've kind of opened up their migration policies slightly more than what they used to, because it used to be very, very strict. I mean, I've never been there, but I think they're less strict than what they used to be.
Yeah, and VIJK in the chat is saying most of our country is desert, Laura Towler. So yeah, they have, I think, if I remember correctly, a lot of the population lives around the edge, like on the coast near the sea, and then in the middle it's all kind of desert and stuff. So Australia looks like it's going to be doing well, but I mean, those sub-Saharan Africa figures are absolutely terrifying. And then one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is that the EU want to create the Euro-Africa Economic Area, don't they? So they want the free movement of people between Europe and Africa. I don't know if
that would make sense. That would make sense, because obviously this was maybe a topic we were going to move on to. There is a decrease. There's been a decrease in the number of migrants moving into the European Union, and ironically enough, they've been going somewhere else to try and move to a better place. So if they can't get into Europe, then they're starting to move over to try and move into America.
Yeah, do you want to go over that? Because didn't you I know you were trying to talk to me about it earlier, but I was rushing about at work. Don't you have some data from the migrants not being able to get into Europe, so they're now flying over to America?
Yeah, so this is we've got the article up on the screen right now. This is an article that was released a couple of days ago. There is an increasing number of migrants who are crossing the US border who are from Africa. So I think third paragraph, in one recent week, agents in the Border Patrol's Del Rio sector stopped more than 500 African migrants found walking in separate groups along the arid land. And that's more than double the total of the 211 migrants who were detained by Border Patrol in the last fiscal year. So in 1 week, you've had more African migrants crossing in the entire of 2018. And what apparently is happening is they're struggling to get across the Mediterranean Sea. So they're flying to South America, like, you know, somewhere like Brazil, and are then walking or traveling up through Southern and Central America and then crossing over the extremely porous border into the US, because they know that right now the US Border Patrol is absolutely overwhelmed, and the Democratic Party do not want migrants to be stopped. Now, this point isn't mentioned in this article, but from what I understand, there's currently the next US census is currently being talked about. And for any Americans in the chat, you may correct me here, but as I understand it, the number of representatives for each state depends on the population size. So if you have illegal migrants in cities which are sanctuary cities, what was proposed was the census would include, are you legal or illegal in this country? And the Democrats don't want that to happen, because then it decreases the number of people who are legitimate for then, you know, the representatives for government being dictated for each state, because California used to have a much smaller number of representatives for the state, whereas now it's much larger, and California is a sanctuary state. So you have lots of migrants are moving into California who are not going to be deported. But then if on the census it shows that they have, say, 1 million illegal migrants in the country, then that will affect their ability to have the number of representatives in their state. So it's all very, very sneaky. And obviously this is falling right into their lap, because it's now not just Central and Southern American people, it's now Africans who are coming to the USA and are having to cross over an ocean to get here. So it's somewhat depressing to see this happen.
Yeah, so my first question that I thought of when you told me about this earlier is, who is paying for them to fly over to the border? Do you have any information?
I don't. Now, what I would assume is 80% of these people are economic migrants. They're not refugees. Now, I think the kind of going rate to cross over the Mediterranean right now is between $1,000 and $3,000. So I'm guessing if they can get a legal plane ticket to the States, or sorry, to South America, there's obviously going to be less checks in South America than North America. So they can go there. Once they're into the country, they can then disappear into the ether and travel north as it goes. I imagine there's some kind of funding going on through NGOs or whatever. I'm assuming it traces back to some very rich people, but it's quite scary how much they are able to do. Leave the country that they're in, go to another country, fly to South America, and then travel up through, maybe a dozen countries, pass through their borders to come to the USA.
Yeah, it's terrifying, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually giving them cash to do this, because we've reported at Defend Europa stories of migrants being given, was it a couple of €1,000 or something when they turned up at the shores to help them smuggle into the country and stuff. And obviously there's all these illegal shuttle services and stuff shipping them over to the south of Europe. So it wouldn't surprise me if George Soros and his cronies were funding this. Yeah, I think this is something that we need to stay on top of, even though we usually only report European news, because if they're being illegally funded to fly over to the southern border to then illegally cross into America, then that's a pretty big story. And I haven't actually heard anyone else talking about it. I've not been too active checking the news over the last few days because I've been quite busy, but that's pretty terrifying stuff, don't you think?
It certainly is. Now, to give him credit, I heard about this from a kind of left-leaning centrist YouTuber, Tim Pool. He was the one who had reported on that yesterday, and probably, I guess, a lot of people on here won't like him, but I find him to be quite balanced in his reporting, and he's the one who's been talking about this, and he's certainly highlighting the issues. When a lot of left-leaning media won't do it, because obviously they're trying to play down the problem that's been there. Now, I think I'm just reading through this article. I think there was a number mentioned. Yeah, I mean, you're finding there's certain places in the States where people are being put to. So, for example, Portland, Maine, is one of these cities where lots of Somalian refugees were resettled in the 1990s. I think that might be where Congressman Ilhan Omar stems from. I think she was put there. I might be wrong on that. But you're going to have these groups of people are bused to certain states far away from the US border. As long as they can get across the US border and they're not deported, then basically they're here to stay. Which is such a foreign concept, because the countries which they're fleeing from, if you illegally entered into them, you'd probably find yourself arrested. So it's just such a backwards place where worse off countries than us have tougher immigration policies than us. And it's just a sad state of affairs that the concept of a country now is being eroded. It's this globalist state whereby everything is free flowing and there's no longer any kind of identity to be proud of.
Yeah, God, that's such a black pill. I've just had a thought. I think maybe that we should do a positive podcast episode and maybe talk about European art or architecture or dance or music or something, and just have like a really nice like thank you for European culture positive podcast episode, because we are just kind of reporting negative stuff all the time, aren't we? But it's what's happening, and the mainstream media are picking up on these stories, so that's why we do it. Do you think that'd be a good idea to maybe have like a celebration of European culture episode?
I think it would be good. I think a lot of times people do go on about how negative the news is, and even news sites that aren't reporting the stuff that we're talking about, they're still reporting negative stuff, because no news sells like bad news. Good news doesn't sell the same way. So I think obviously if somebody's going to do it, it might as well be us.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We're going to stop talking about how you're all going to be replaced now. So as always, if anybody could like and comment on the stream afterwards, it really helps with our engagement and it helps the video show up in people's feeds. As you all know, we've been suspended from Twitter and Instagram now, so we only have YouTube and Facebook. I think YouTube might turn into our main platform, potentially BitChute if we can stay on YouTube. I don't know, but yeah, we're gonna be working at some videos and stuff. So yeah, as always, if you can engage with the video, that helps our algorithms. Also, if you'd like to support Defend Europa, there are some links below the chat. I think we have PayPal, Bitcoin, and a few other things under there. Daph, do you have anything else that you want to add about any topics?
Well, just to add on to what you said at the end there, for any listeners who don't know, we do have a Telegram page as well, because that is where a lot of banned users are migrating to.
Yeah, a lot of people have moved over there after the Twitter and YouTube suspensions over the last couple of weeks. So I'm just going to post a link in the chat now, just before the thing goes off. It's for Mark Colette's video. If you guys could go over there and give him a cheer. He's starting at 9 p.m. But that's it. So thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.